All right. So happy Friday.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping in here. You and the family doing all right?
Not so good this time, I like your question, like how you doing, like really. And it's
Yeah.
we had a death in the family yesterday. So
Man,
yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that.
my wife's cousin overdosed. He's 30 years old.
Oh man.
Yeah. So,
Well, our thoughts and our prayers for sure will be with your family.
yeah,
And
thank you.
um, yeah, it's been a heavy week, like with Brianna this
Yeah.
week, and just so much stuff that's going on with the fires here in California, the election coming up, the COVID, and like the joblessness. We need some hope and
Yes.
sparks of like
Yeah.
some good and some joy. So hopefully, like this conversation and hearing your story as we record it and get into it will be just that thing
Yeah.
for anybody that's going to watch. So
Yeah. And I think, like you said, I think it's important thing is like the time is now.
mhm.
And you guys thought about, when is the time to do this program? Time is now. I mean, if anything, life is, and every second is the most precious. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, maybe we could start with just like um I guess to extend the how are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
You're a family man as well. Like, how
Yep.
is, yourself and then your household kind of handling everything that's happening right now, just in general?
Well, for my household, it's my wife, Samantha, and then my son, Grayson. He's 3.5. So their lives haven't changed too much in the sense that they've been home,
Yeah,
for the last couple of years. So he hasn't had to go to school and then be stopped from going to school or go see friends. And then, he was supposed to start preschool this year, but wasn't able to, of course.
mhm.
So that hasn't affected him too much, but you could feel the tension. He can't, why can't he go to the park and play in the playground? All these things definitely build up, and you could definitely see some type of like angst in him. And for
Yeah,
my wife, it's difficult too.
yeah. It's weird to have like a child who's not all the way developmentally there, processing during these times. You'll look back and you'll be like, dude, you were like 3 years old when this
Yeah,
like world changing
yeah,
crazy event happened. And you'll have to help them process at 10 or 15 or like 20, like just how weird of a time this was. Um,
exactly. And then
yeah.
Brandon, for the structure of this, so this is, will there be other people on, or is it really just me and you talking through the dialogue and recording, or are there other people listening now, or classmates? How does the structure work?
Yeah, it'll just be me and you.
Okay.
And then what we'll do is we'll publish the conversation and it'll
Okay.
act as a provocation, like as people listen to your story
Okay.
and, hear kind of the potholes that you might have stepped in and the
Yep.
banana peels that you might have avoided. Like they'll take inspiration from the story. They will
Perfect.
reflect on their own past and their own journeys based on the Q&A that we have together. So
Got it. Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing. I'm excited.
at some point this week, we will edit and kind of put this up
Got
and
it.
then see what reaction comes from the community of, 750 plus people now,
Wow.
part of the community college community. So we're super excited to see kind
Yeah.
of momentum in the groundswell.
Sure.
Yeah. So maybe we get into it to talk about, like, for people who don't know who Sneaker Steve Patino is,
Yep.
how would you kind of just give a couple minutes of an introduction about yourself, where you come from and like what you're into these days, and then we'll kind of go backwards.
Sure. So my name is Steve Patino, born in Elmhurst, Queens in New York, born in the epicenter and the creation of hip hop during the 70s and 80s in New York City. So it was a very, very dynamic, special time.
Yep.
I was born and raised with two immigrant parents. My mother and my father are both from Colombia.
Yep.
They came, my mother had a 6th grade education, so very little education, my father as well. One of them came by themselves first, then really worked really hard here to bring other siblings to America,
Mhm.
and really just had a lot of just side jobs, very just,
Yeah.
My mother cleaned hair salons, and she made something called an empanada, which is a kind of like a beef patty.
Hmm.
She sold those in my kitchen. So my friends would tease me going to school and be like, "Oh, I could smell Steve coming," because I smelled like the oil,
Yeah.
which wasn't fun back then. But and that's kind of, I believe, where I learned this kind of market. My mother had a small place where she had a flea market in Jackson Heights, where she had a little booth inside of kind of like this indoor flea market, and I would clean windows there for about 50 cents.
Hmm.
So very much this entrepreneurial, kind of like make ends meet kind of structure. And so that's who I am. I'm born and raised in Queens, and Elmhurst, for the people that don't know, is one of the most culturally diverse communities in the world. It's been documented by National Geographic because of the amount of nationalities. I think it's like 180 nationalities. And I believe that's why I get along with so many people, because when I looked at my building or my immediate surroundings, I had people from almost every single nationality. And I kind of laugh about it. And I said I had every smell as well, you know, from every single nationality. You knew who they were. You could just walk by their door and you could smell their cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very interesting, very colorful time in Queens at that time.
Yeah, I know coming from the Midwest to California, even like
Yep.
the first teammates that I had, and these were the first Indian and Chinese friends that I had, as a 21-year-old who had spent most of his time, with Caucasian people, Black people, and Latinx people in Chicago. One of the things that hit me was the smells that you're talking about. So the dumplings, the curry that the
Yeah,
Indians
yeah, yeah,
like to use, and the spices in their food,
yeah, yeah.
the dress, and all of that diversity. It means so much to me now, but I just didn't have exposure to it the same way that you did, kind of as a kid growing up in it. So that's something that I'm sure you like probably have in your back pocket, even to this day, in that you're able to connect with all different types of people, and that's probably an asset that served you pretty well as you
Oh,
made.
huge. I mean, it's a big part of why I've been able to move so much, so easily and so freely. And then, it's also very important to mention, in terms of my upbringing, that a lot of the years, me growing up in my teenage years, once I became a little bit older, I was scared. It
Mm.
was a very scary time. It was the beginnings of really crack cocaine in the neighborhoods, and drug dealers on the block, and gangs, and not knowing if you're going to make it home okay. I would have to come in my elevator with a switchblade and knife as a
Mm.
kid, because I didn't know who was coming out of my elevator when I was going home at night.
Yeah.
Um, every block, I kind of had to know how to navigate, through the neighborhood, where to go.
Hmm.
I kind of laugh at it now, and I've coined, I almost say it was like I was like a Waze for the hood.
Yeah.
You had to know where to go and where not to go.
Yeah.
It was serious. You could get robbed for your sneakers, you could get robbed for your bicycle, you could get robbed for your jacket.
Hmm.
And these were things that built me up. And when I look at, later on in corporate world, and just in life in general, um, I'm a survivor. So I would, say, to the community, that I believe I'm a survivor of that.
Hmm.
I grew up, in train tunnels doing graffiti,
Yeah.
and then putting them on a T-shirt, and selling them. So that I come from that spirit.
That's amazing. And did you like as a teenager start to develop an appreciation for sneakers and for art and for like that kind of thing, or did that come a little bit later, closer to like when you turned into an adult and like started to um, get into being a young man?
It started early. I think from like even pictures of me as a kid, I was always dressed really well.
Hmm.
Now when you're a parent now, and you know what clothing cost and just cost of living, it's incredible to see like what our parents had to go through to even put clothing on our back. Some of us. But through, I would say, kind of like 7, 8, 9, 10, clothing already was becoming a big part of my identity. And when I was 14 and 16, by the time 16 already happened, I had already started my first clothing company.
Mm.
And because we came from New York City and the epicenter of hip hop, a lot of the brands like FUBU, coming out of Queens, or P&B, or the brands like Willie Esco, these were all brands that are emerging out of this hip hop culture. and we were seeing people commercialize graffiti onto garments or clothing onto garments and
Mhm.
become millionaires. So, a lot of people don't know, if you look at like Mobb Deep, and those guys went to art and design high school, and they took some of their designs, like the Hennessy football jerseys and all that stuff. They actually designed them themselves. Kids that were in art and design high school were my business partners. And
Ah,
then later we started trade shows, and we were part of these trade shows, like the Ralph McDaniels trade show,
mhm.
or which was also part of the Black Expo, and then also trade shows in Japan. So they
Got
were taking from our culture in New York and really just being able to either sell it in Germany or Japan or internationally. And that was at 14 or 16 years old.
Yeah.
So because at that time frame, New York was really the epicenter in terms of fashion and business and commerce, I was lucky to have that wave.
Yeah.
Now the Midwest has it, West Coast has it, and designers now from the Midwest, I believe, are some of the strongest. But back then, New York really had that kind of current. So I was able to see examples, and I think that that's very important for people to know, is that you just need to see it to
Mhm.
believe it, right? And I saw it. So even though I came from welfare and from poverty, I knew that it happened, or I saw people that actually achieved it that looked like me, and that really gave me the hope.
Yeah, that awareness that you talk about is super important, and I think that part of why this series is existing in the first place, to give
Yeah,
uh, that Steve in 2020, who's got the whole life ahead of him or the whole life ahead of her, kind of an awareness that this other universe exists, and once you know about it, if you're interested in it, that you could go for the moon in that
yeah,
particular industry or category.
yeah,
And then the second point that I think is interesting is that you got an education without being in school necessarily. So like
yeah,
you were like on the ground floor of something and you noticed that it was important. Um, so it wasn't an academic institution per se, but you were getting an education in its own right, kind of just by being there and paying attention and participating. Like you had your own, business as a teenager in this space. So the next question that I was going to ask is like, what does community college mean to you? Have you gone through community college? Like, what was your formal education like? But I wanted to call out before asking you that question that it seemed like you already had some education and some like unofficial schooling going on even before you got to be college age, quote unquote.
yeah. I think a couple of things is that my mentality, and I think, for me, I really sat in some of the questions that you emailed me and really thought about what were the things or the psyche that allowed me to think. And I always wanted to be a triple threat. I played basketball growing up. So when you look at a 3-point stance, the way you can move, you can shoot, you can pass, or you can actually, take a step, right? And dribble. So for me, I was always like, okay, if I have my own brand, but if I'm part of a retail store, which I was a buyer, I was going to get information. And if I was also a designer, I had the ability to move
Mm-hmm.
and be able to then say to myself, like, I become more of a threat, right?
Yep.
So I could either design for another company, have my own brand, and then also sell retail. So I was always thinking of that at that early age. And then for me, community college, what that meant to me to discuss that question, which was, it took me 6 years to graduate high school.
Mm.
So I was my father died when I was 14. So that
Mm.
was probably like sophomore year of high school.
Yep.
And that really affected me in a big way, 10th grade. And I really just took to the streets. So I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. I got into a lot of trouble and I wouldn't go to school at all. And it took
Mm.
me 6 years to finally graduate the high school system in New York. The only school that would accept me was a community college,
Mm-hmm.
which was LaGuardia Community College. And so to me, community college was something of hope. But it was also something of like, you always had the interpretation of, okay, this is a stepping stone. But then there's also the negative connotation to like, a community college is not a real college. It's
Yep.
like the only one that will accept you. It's like they almost have to accept you. And there was that, right? And like you said, I think that you have the power to choose. You can accept it as in some situations, some community colleges are, mine wasn't a fancy one. So it
Mhm.
was like an extension of high school,
Yep.
right? To some, and at the other standpoint of it, I was able to pick my own curriculum and actually create something very magnificent from it.
Mhm.
So through the Exploring Transfer Program, I was able to go to Vassar College
Yep.
in Poughkeepsie, where I'm studying in a school with, billions of dollars of endowment.
Yeah.
And I was also able to become a senator for the day through the mock Senate program, also through the community college. Um, and I was also able to teach
Yeah.
ESL and career development. So for me, community college was incredible in that sense because those 2 years also allowed me to really, when I was able to pick my own curriculum and
Mhm.
actually look at and think about classes like critical thinking or acting,
Yeah.
allowed me to just open up my mind
Mm.
and the type of learning and the people that I was around. And when I graduated Phi Theta Kappa.
Mhm.
So you see 2 years, and I really say this a lot to like parents that are part of this course,
Yep.
is that believing in your children. Because if you think of me statistically, I should have just been, almost kind of like forgotten,
Yeah.
right? I was in trouble. I was on drugs. I was getting, in trouble with the law. I was that kid,
Yeah.
6 years to graduate high school, 2 years of summer school. I was
Mhm.
probably in 3 yearbooks. Like, they're
Yeah.
like, the kid is never, he's not going anywhere,
Yeah.
and then I go into valedictorian of LaGuardia College, and now I'm giving a speech in front of 5,000 people in Madison Square Garden,
Mm.
right? 2 years of just that change in your mind, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to NYU,
Mhm.
and which was we talked about in our phone call. And in NYU, I was able to go through the entrepreneurship department and take classes at Stern School of Business
Mhm.
with emerging entrepreneurs in the beginning of the dot-com phase in the early thousands. So that was, so just if you look at it 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Not graduating high school, being a complete mess, and
Mhm.
now sitting amongst, already I had dot-com millionaires sitting in class with me as undergrads.
Yeah.
And, I'm walking into Stern School of Business and I see the NASDAQ rolling.
Mhm.
Just another world.
That's heavy, man. Like, I'm thinking about how much transformation can take place in such a small amount of time, and then also like how much trauma that a lot of minority culture folks have to walk around with that maybe their teachers or their classmates will never see, and like how we should be given empathy, more empathy to people, and more like freedom and flexibility than we're given like judgment and like finger wagging. um, who would have known that your parent would have died, and that um, even out of a circumstance like that, you would have been able to like go and achieve something, even though it took a couple more years.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's something that you look back and you're like, man, God was looking out for me, or like things just came together in a way that, um, it worked out over time. And I'm sure that's like a lesson that you're able to give back to the youth now,
Yeah.
even as you traverse your own, um, you know, peaks and valleys in life. Don't let the minor setbacks bury you. Like, keep going, get up, dust yourself off. And for this time especially, I think it's important for us to keep that kind of mindset as well, just because we got a lot of challenges ahead of us.
Yeah.
But man, to speak to the brilliance of how somebody in your position could, take that lot in life and actually make lemonade, out of lemons is phenomenal. So maybe getting into the next question,
Yep.
you mentioned that surrounding yourself with kind of people from diverse backgrounds and like surrounding yourself with people who are brilliant has been a way for you to like up your game over time.
Yeah.
You left off in business school, where at Stern. What kinds of things have you been able to contribute to folks that are not like you at all? And then what kinds of things have you been able to learn on the other side that are most helpful as you've been a design executive and have created your own lines and businesses and things like that, coming out of your, your early 20s?
Yeah, so I think the the first big thing, which is a big part of my story that changed my life forever, was surrounding myself with people that were in a better position than me, and or aligned with where the future me wanted to be, or where my trajectory in life was at that moment that was going upward. So for example, there's one woman by the name of Elena Romero who was a graduate student at NYU, that was in the fashion industry. She's the first female editor of DNR magazine, which is now like your Women's Wear Daily, through Fairchild Publications. Puerto Rican, Latina, very strong woman. She's an author of many books. She's still a teacher now. And one phone call, my friendship with her led to one phone call that changed my life. And when I was consulting for a company, they asked me to come on board and say, Steve, we would love, your analysis of the East Coast market in the industry. And I think this would really benefit us. We have a sales meeting, come to this hotel. We have about 100 staff here. Could you, talk to them? I'm probably 24 years old, 25 years old. First consulting gig I've done in my life, at that sense. And it was based on success of the sneaker store that I had in Queens. And through that, because a friend asked me to do it, I was going to charge maybe like $100 or $200 an hour. This is 20 years ago. So $200 an hour, give a nice steak dinner. It's for a friend. And so I called my friend just to check. And I'm like, hey, Elaine, I'm super happy. I'm doing this talk for this company. And this is what they want me to do. And, I don't know what to charge. Right. And I think this is part of the learning I want to teach the class is like, sometimes when you're younger, so any of the younger folks that are taking this class, you might be presented with opportunities and understand that you're presented those opportunities because you have a talent and a gift that somebody sees and they want, right? And sometimes when they become innate to you, right? So a lot of people of, I would say like of color, we just have style and we have good taste and we know what's cool, And sometimes we just think, that's what everyone knows. Of course that's cool. It's not true. A lot of people don't, right? Our swag, the way that we carry ourselves, everything that we're about is part of our culture and who we are. And that's value in that, right? And she was able to tell me as someone who was 4 years older than me, and she literally ripped me a new a-hole on the phone. I swear to God, like she was just cursing me out. Like, you're fucking crazy. You're going to make these people millions of dollars. No, you don't know your value, and I was like, a part of me felt like she was bugging. And I was like, well, you're chill. Like, this is for my friend. It's for a company. Like, but she said it in a way to me, like, she was like, Steve, you need to charge $2,500 an hour. And you're giving them a steal.
Wow. And
the way that she said it, it felt so right the way she was saying it, like she knew. And I said, all right. Well, I said, Elena, well, I owe you a big steak dinner if I get $2,500 an hour. But, as my story goes, I got $2,500 an hour. That turned into 4 hours a week, 6 hours a week. So now now I'm billing $10,000, $12,000 for 4 to 5 hours a month. So 25 years old, the consulting is paying me over $100,000 a year, and I'm doing 4 hours of work. And that changed my life. So the reason I want to harp on that is because if I didn't reach out, if I didn't say, hey, there's better in this world, there's smarter people in this world, there's people that know, there's people that are going to help me, I need help. I'm in this thing. Go to the smartest person, the most successful person and ask. Especially if you're young, they're going to help you even more. And say, what should I do to protect us? Because this story might have been where I might have even had this story, honestly. Because I was able to take that 4 or 5 hours of work and say, hey, I'm going to start billing you at almost 150 grand for 7 hours. What about if I actually worked for you? What about if I was able to do this?
Yep.
And that actually changed for me to get one of the biggest positions of my life, and changed, and what even brought me to the West Coast.
Yeah.
That phone call. And then it changed my pay grade for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I mean, so many bars that you just dropped in the last few minutes, but to get like back into a couple of them, the thing that a lot of us have to wear on our sleeve to the outside world is this like confident swag, like I got it, like I don't need any help. Maybe you came from like a single parent family
Yep.
and you had to be an adult, at 13, 14, 15.
Yep.
So did you always know, or did you always have it in you to be asking for help and to like to reach out to people that you knew could better you, or is this something that you had to learn? Because I know a lot of males of color might struggle to
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
out and to like make themselves vulnerable in that way.
No, I've always, I mean, my friends have always teased me because they're like, Steve, you don't care. You're going to
Yeah.
ask. Like even down to this class, like
Yeah.
this class, I started with, I'm going to give,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then my vulnerable side, which is my real side, is saying, hey, I'm also going to benefit. I even asked you, and Jason, can I take the class?
Yeah.
But I led with giving because that was what my heart and my gut said. I said, I'm in a position where I can give more, right? And I'm vulnerable enough to say, and can I take the class too?
Yeah.
That was before you guys opened it up to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that is just my innate nature, and I have to follow that because it's led me to where I am now, where
Yeah.
I'm not scared to ask. If I need help, if I want information, if I want a favor, I reach out to my community, my network. I believe in my community, my network.
Yeah. So I wanted to put a stopping point or a pin in that for everybody that's going to watch this and look at it in the future and just say, hey, that's a gem that everybody needs to take and put in their back pocket and internalize moving forward, because you can never, especially with how fast everything moves and how much data is being created every single day, nobody is going to know it all, have it all together, and not be able to benefit from somebody who's got more subject matter expertise. So if you're watching the rebroadcast of this, like, make sure you jump in and create a community of folks that you feel comfortable reaching out to, so that they can help you. So you mentioned the West Coast and like getting positioned to like an opportunity that was keeping you on a great growth trajectory. Take us to how you made it to California and kind of that period of your life.
Yeah. So basically, right after I graduated college, I signed my first $1 million deal. So right out of college. And one of the lessons that I got from there, which when you ask me like, what are you learning or what can you teach the class, is that at that point in life, I didn't have a strong legal team or advisory team or anyone around me that had raised $1 million or more.
Yep.
And that led me into a bad deal, which then led me into California. So that was a trajectory. It was like, I had my office in Times Square, 42nd Street. I'm 25 years old. I have employees. I'm hiring people. I have all this staff. I'm taking people from major companies. They all work for me. I don't have a good term sheet. I didn't even really understand what to look out for.
Yeah.
Right. To protect myself. And that company goes down in a year, just because we have a huge debacle with the primary investor. Everything goes that we worked for so long. And it was that t-shirt company that I started when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So we had run it independently for 9 to 10 years. We get the big investment and then it goes to shambles, right?
Yeah.
After 10 years. So I'm then like, I need a job.
Yep.
And that's where the consulting came in. And then I got hired for a large action sports company in California. And from there, I took that into I said, you know what, I'm going to get in and I'm going to prove them what I can do. And I left the company, making more than vice presidents of the company because I was able to, once again, leverage a unique hybrid position, which none of my friends were able to do. So I was promoted quicker than most of my friends or colleagues.
Mhm.
And I was able to, as a businessman, say to them, look, I can offer you this and I can offer you this. I
Mhm.
know I want to make this, and these are the reasons why I can actually make this happen.
Yeah.
They created a model for me, which is the first hybrid position in the company's history.
Yep.
Um,
Let's pause right there just to because there's like lanes and like big companies have kind of different positions that are individual contributor and management and executives, and each of those have like a pay band and all of that. Talk about the conversations you had to have in order for you to say, while I respect, the things that you guys have going on here, this is
yeah.
value that I'm bringing here, and this is a proposal that I'm making in order to make this make sense for me. Because I don't know that everybody who's watching this would have um, even a thought that that kind of conversation is possible. But I think it's
Yeah.
with like understanding your value and like having a business sense of what you're bringing and adding to an organization. So just talk for a couple minutes about how you came to that and then how those conversations went during that kind of phase of your life.
Yeah, I think it was that I was already an entrepreneur
Mm-hmm.
and I had already owned brands coming into the larger company. So
Mm-hmm.
I was always a brand owner. So I looked at the business as that. And
Yeah.
I said, what can I add value? So even though I was, let's say, a director, I was able to look at it from a business model sense and look and say, I don't care about the title. I'm more looking at the pay.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, at the time, I was asking for title and pay, but
Mm-hmm.
I settled really quickly for pay. And I was like, it's okay. I don't need the business card.
Yeah.
Just pay me more than whatever that other business card. And
Yeah.
that it actually worked, and I had a position that made more than vice presidents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the structure was based on me adding value and delivering. So I was able to do something uniquely different that other colleagues couldn't do. And it would actually cost them more money to try to hire. So
Yeah.
once again, this triple threat goes right back to it. I'm able to create
Mm-hmm.
and sell and bring a distribution channel.
Yep.
So if I'm able to bring you the customer and design into it, I'm already taking two positions. And if I can create and manage that department, you would have to hire a third person in an org to do that. I
Yeah.
can do both or all three. And for this is why I deserve X.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think that that's going to benefit so many people that listen into this because where we are in time is at a place where if you have a thought or an idea about something, it's so much fewer days that have to pass before you can actually act on that idea due to technology, due to like globalization and the world kind of being smaller than it used to be. So I want people to hear all of these tips and tricks that come out of your story just because, ideas are a dime a dozen, but like how you execute on them and how quickly you're able to enter a market and make a bang in it could be the difference between you working for someone for the rest of your life versus you being actually able to be an owner and to call the shots and to kind of have that management experience and that ownership experience. So that's amazing. So keep going. So you're out on the West Coast. You're doing the job of like 4 or 5 people and getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Keep going with that.
Well, yeah, I think a couple of things I learned from that. Money was good, but I was spending it as fast as I got it. I was 28 years old at that time. So once again, me being the first,
Yeah.
right? Or the only. I'm
Mm-hmm.
one of the only Latinos in the whole entire organization at all. I'm definitely one of the only hip hop New York City Latinos, very much different than like a SoCal flip flops and like
Yeah.
board shorts. That wasn't me. And so that in itself was just completely different. And as I'm going through the company and working with them, I think also for me, because I really, kind of like from our first conversation, I think what people will learn more is from my mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you hope and I'm going to show you the story. And thank God. And luckily, I've been able to climb throughout this journey, these chapters of my life, because they are chapters in this book that I'm writing. But what I messed up in, which I think is what they're going to learn the most in, is that me as a Latino, I didn't have someone that made that kind of money near me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what a 401k was. I didn't know what saving was. I was
Yeah.
28 coming from California. I had a mother, so I had to pay her rent,
Yeah.
right? So even though I'm making this, my parents were my responsibility. I still have to pay my mom's rent and help her out. And that was really the difficult part.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't understand what to do with that money. I didn't understand in stock options, which
Yep.
I had them, but I blew them. I didn't know what that was.
Yep.
I also didn't know really what real estate was early on.
Mm-hmm.
If I talk about my wife all the time, like imagine the real estate I could have had then and what that portfolio would have looked like,
Yep.
making that much money at 28 years old. Um, so that led me to say, hey, look, if I can make this 200,000, if I can create these kind of positions, what if I was a brand owner? And I believe I had a lot of those skill sets to do so. So I moved to LA, and from LA, I got involved with really, really big families that were in the multiple billions of licensing. So
Mm-hmm.
once again, a whole nother set of,
Yeah.
now I'm literally among stars, and and I got investors that were part of professional teams.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm in Hollywood, and I'm in red carpets, and I'm in movie studios, and I'm sitting front row at the games. Is
Yeah.
different. I'm in Entourage basically, like literally. Um, and I always wanted to have a company that was meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we started our other company when I was 30 and
Mm-hmm.
moved to California, which was about individual transformation and fashion. So that was my LA life,
Yeah.
right? And that was, and very quickly, I think right around that time, then 2008 hit, so the financial crisis hit,
Yep.
and when I looked at having a startup in the middle of the financial crisis, I said to myself, at that time, I really appreciated the big cushiony position,
Yeah.
because I went from making that much money to probably having like $1,000 a month and
Mm.
living on a friend's couch.
Yeah.
So I went from 4 apartments. I had an apartment in Miami, New York, San Diego, and LA,
Mm-hmm.
to living on a couch in 2008, and that's what led me to move to Asia, to China.
I think that's been important for me too, to understand how to live within your means and below, to the best of your ability, so that in the lean times, like in 2008, or even now, like during
Yeah.
COVID, you've got the savings that you talked about to help you out. You've got um, the wherewithal to know like exactly what you need in order to survive. Like, I know how to cook for myself, or I know that I don't need to live in, a condo in downtown Manhattan. I'm okay to be in a cheaper option than that if necessary. Like all of those skills, it seems like some folks kind of stumble into it, and then some folks, maybe with exposure to different types of folks, have been taught that over time, so that it's like, oh yeah, of course you would do that. And for us, it's like, oh man, I mean, it would have been great if somebody would have told me that as a youngster, but it's great that you were able to get that. So like in 2008, like coming out of that time period, um, talk a little bit about kind of transitioning out of this country and into a new culture and kind of a new experience.
Whoa. I mean, China was like a cultural shock
Hmm.
when I moved there, and I had to learn how to speak the language. So to speak Mandarin Chinese,
Hmm.
I wanted to learn at that time, China had just surpassed Japan as the second biggest economy in the world.
Hmm.
So I was like, I felt like I'm just gonna tell my son this story. My son wasn't even born, and I was just like, I'm gonna tell my son this story that I went to China, and we were able to raise money in China. We were able to raise POs for factories because I was closer there. And when they see the CEO of a company or the president of a company living in their country, learning their language, they're like, this guy ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like he's serious. He's committed. He's with us, on Saturdays in the factory, because they work 7 days a week there.
Hmm.
Um, and they were like, he's real. And we were able to survive and get a lot of funding and a lot of help from China. and other, groups of people that lived in China that helped us. Our Italian factories came from my contacts in China, which were Italians that lived in China,
Yeah.
or some of our bigger factories were Koreans that lived in China.
Yeah.
I had all this incredible community, once again, community of
Mhm.
expats from around the world. And that helped me and helped me grow.
Yeah.
I became a man. I left this kind of like, you know, I would say almost student of the game and came back a man, when I came back from China.
Yeah.
I understood the world a lot different, a lot better. And I did that for 5 years.
Yeah. I think that exposure, kind of going abroad, like the first country I went to kind of outside of the US was Mexico, just across the border to
Yeah,
Tijuana on like a mission trip to build something for Habitat for Humanity.
yeah.
Then after that, it was to Shenzhen in China to give like a
Oh,
tech.
wow. You went to Shenzhen?
And and I've been to Japan. There's been like these moments where you go and you're like, man, you don't even get the sense that anything exists outside of America if you're like here for your whole life or like
Oh,
you're in
yeah.
for so long. So it's hopefully like people get a hunger to go abroad and to check out other cultures. And the next question I have is about just like the delta, like the difference between a New Yorker with that state of mind who's been in Cali with that state of mind, who's now leaving kind of American society altogether to go to China. Like you mentioned the work ethic, working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Um, and last week I just checked out that Stephon Marbury like documentary. He went out there for like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
like how would you just describe for people that have not been to China or maybe outside of America before, like what did that mean to you? What kinds of things did they emphasize? And then how has it helped you now?
I don't even know if I can answer that in one sitting. It's so it's so compact, of that question of like there's so much there.
Yeah.
Um, I'll give you some of the learnings that I did, and then I think that it was incredible to be there during their industrial revolution. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible in just history in general. They opened the country a little bit over 30 years, not probably like 30, 40 years now. To
Mm-hmm.
see even Shenzhen become what it was, and
Yeah.
that was a swamp from
Mm-hmm.
basically like from a swamp to Manhattan
Yes.
in in a few years
Yep.
is mind blowing. What the power of what they can do, for some right or wrong reasons, because you can't grow that way, safely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to see the amount of like I really wanted to take back. So like I wanted to learn a little bit more about the culture, meditation, Tai Chi, Kung Fu. I said to myself, the language itself, Mandarin, I wanted to leave there and say I got a sense of some culture also. Um, and then on the manufacturing side, I saw a lot of things I didn't like. Bad conditions. Child labor. I saw a lot of dirt and grime on the street. And sometimes I would walk through streets and see decapitated people on the streets begging for money, and like the culturally the fact that they don't have the same kind of space that we have,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like cultural spacing norms. So people be out right on top of you
Yeah.
and pushing you, um, literally completely different world.
Yeah.
And I learned from it, but ultimately the pollution, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to just stay in that kind of pollution for that long.
Yeah.
And from a manufacturing and brand standpoint, the quality that we were looking for was something that we weren't seeing there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what led me to Italy, and working many years in Italy and in Portugal that I've been doing for now many years.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. So if we like come to today and you're running kind of like this premium kind of luxury footwear apparel type of brand, um, tell people a little bit about kind of what you're doing today who
Sure.
are not familiar with like Ales Gray and all of that. So just a little bit of plug for
Yeah, yeah,
folks.
no, real simple. A less gray is luxury with the purpose.
Okay.
And the name of the company is named after my son. And my dream has always been to own a company with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that the luxury market has the highest margins in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And why am I not seeing more luxury companies giving back?
Mm.
So I wanted to create that space and do it in a cool way. You know, I look at a lot of companies that are philanthropic or let's say charity based, and
Mm-hmm.
they're very crunchy, you
Yeah.
know, and that's not what the product I like to wear. So I
Yeah.
said, why couldn't a cool brand or a hype brand have that same business model?
Yeah.
And that's where we created Less Gray, and Less Gray is named after our son. So our son is Grayson Alessandro, and the
Wow.
name of the company is Less Gray.
Very cool.
And we're in partnership with the Inner City Arts Foundation for Children, where we either teach, do internships through their graduate students or hire some of their students.
Mm-hmm.
And then also a percentage of proceeds go back to inner city arts for future generations.
That's amazing. And then how did you choose that particular organization to partner with? Did that just come through close geography and proximity or through another kind of network?
Network and community.
Okay. Okay.
Right? So our friends own something called #Lunchbag,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the fastest growing food organizations that give back.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to them and I said, look, you know, I really wanted to do this. I'm starting this new startup. This is a big part of my thinking. I reached out to some of my people and executives in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, I want an organization that has to do with all of the arts, that encompasses all of the arts. So singing, dancing, music, graphics, etc. And one of my friends started laughing when I said it. And he was like, Steve, I got the perfect place.
Yeah.
And since then, we've been in partnership with Inner City Arts. They've been around for 30 years in the middle of Skid Row here in LA.
And then the kinds of things that they do, like I've worked with some up here in the Bay Area that like will do murals for a price for a particular, you know, tech business or something. And then the price of that mural is like payment for the kids and like college tuition paid maybe in like increments for the participants of the program. So like what kinds of outputs does this organization kind of put out?
Okay.
And
So what they've done is they've helped over 30,000 students already, and basically they pay for everything. So they work with the cities, the zoning of the schools that don't have the funds to have arts in their schools,
mm-hmm.
and the kids go there for free. So it starts from grade school all the way up to high school, and it's a state-of-the-art facility designed by a very famous architect. So think of it like in the middle of Skid Row, and then all of a sudden you have this white castle because the kids spoke with the architect and they wanted a castle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this shining light that's been there for 30 years with state-of-the-art equipment. They only accept equipment if it's enough for all of the students. So they have singing classes, dance classes. They have their own clay and pottery section. They have a multimedia theater that's there. They have a 3D graphic program. They have 3D printing. They have a robotics section. They have Tim Burton's camera there.
Wow.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, you go there and you're just like, I can't even believe this exists, one. And secondly, in the middle of Skid Row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm safely able to get back down there, that's another, it's a place I got to check out,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, I would love.
Like, hey, man, I'm coming over.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Let's spend maybe the next 5 minutes or so before we wrap here, just talking about maybe the future and
Yep.
like if we were to be able to create whatever we wanted for the folks who are on this call watching, or even our own like children, like what kinds of things would you like to see like our country and our world come to over the next handful of years? And maybe the follow-up question to that will be like some good ideas for us as a big community to start thinking about in order to move in that direction.
I think first I would say is to be kind, right? Be kind to one another. You never know what the person is going through. You have no idea,
Yep.
right? And I believe good is the new cool.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is my hope for the future, that the future generations will see what we've done to this world and just say, I can't accept this anymore. That's not the world that I want to live in.
Yeah.
And really invest and give hope and inspiration to the youth, and teach them that they actually can make a change.
Mm-hmm.
Give them blueprints, give them information, give them, be a better person yourself so that you actually are the role model that they see, not just hear, because seeing is believing.
Mm-hmm.
Continue for all of us in this class and beyond, continue these classes. So thank you for that. Continue to shine so that people in our world and our community show that good people can win. Because
Mm-hmm.
the more that you have of that, I believe it's going to create even a bigger and better society. So those are some of the things that I look at right now and for the future. And if you do that, and if you just magnify that by each household, it'll permeate. And I really am a believer of that.
Yeah, I'm staying prayerful with you, man, that we're able to realize that sooner rather than later. And
And we have to do it now.
yeah, now's the time. Like we're all shut in and a little bit isolated. So I think that, even before the sports leagues started back up, everybody was just sitting with themselves without as much entertainment and opportunity to like be distracted by other things, to like start to think deeply about what the world that we want to live in should look like, and what components that we need to like take out and just toss out and say, that's not necessary anymore. We don't want to live like that anymore. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, maybe we end it with just some let's do like a quick fire, uh, just some fun facts.
Okay.
What are you reading or watching like on Netflix right now? A couple of like books and movies maybe.
Yeah. So the Social Dilemma I just watched. I'm big just overall like the Netflix and Amazon Prime. I did a huge deep dive on just really like the injustice that's happened in this country. And even when you asked me like in the beginning, how are you doing? Having more of that information, after what happened with George Floyd and now with Breonna Taylor, is just, it's almost like the hard part of it is that you almost get sadder the more information you have,
Yeah.
and it's just heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so I'm really taking this time to learn
Mm-hmm.
and understand that I don't know,
Yep.
what a lot of my Black friends are going through. And it's difficult. It's difficult, and it's heavy. And so I just been really learning and deep diving as much as possible for me during this time. And I think for me, it's really about like, I'm always looking at like, what are the principles that I can learn from? I really spend a lot of time in a 5-minute journal.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things that are helping me right now is I ask myself every day who I am.
Mm.
When I'm in the shower and I'm just by myself, and I just say, who are you?
Yeah.
And that just helps me. It's a big question. The first time you ask yourself that, it's kind of like, it's heavy. Emotions might come out, because it's a loaded question. But as you get through that, it really centers you. And
Yeah.
sometimes this world is just literally kicking you and punching you and throwing you around.
Mm-hmm.
And you forget who you are.
Yeah.
And you forget how strong you are. And you forget where you've made it.
Yep.
And when you remind yourself of who you are, you stand strong and firm, and you actually be, because you're in the present.
Yep. And you got to take time, because we have a fast-paced society where, I was in a training last week and I learned about this thing called the box breath. And you like literally breathe in for 4 seconds,
Yeah.
hold for 4 seconds, let it out for 4 seconds. And it's like, when's the last time you just stopped and closed your eyes and like breathe? You know what I mean? So you can't remember how strong you are if you never take a moment to like stop and reflect and like think about that. So I'm hoping that anybody that's watching this is cool to call timeout. I need a 20, just like, make some space for yourself and do what you need to do in order to make it through day by day. Cause this is,
And maybe you start the classes with that. Could be good too. Just
yeah.
that box, kind of like let all of that out to start. And then for the book that I'm reading, which I've always loved and appreciated, is I like Tim Ferriss's book,
Mm-hmm.
where he interviews just hundreds of people. And for me, I've learned a lot through that, because sometimes you will know what's possible through your story or the story of others that believe what your story is, and people tell you what your story is or your trajectory. And I like instances where I've heard people create their own, as all of us do. And when you see it, you're just like, oh, wow, I'm just living this script that I'm telling myself or that I'm programmed, but you can actually break that. You don't have to be that, you know, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to the group chat podcast, which is a podcast that I'm really, really a big fan of. And I think for me, it's like these podcasts where I'm hearing information and getting good information about the whole world also shows me how much I'm not thinking about other things. And sometimes you're just so stuck in your brain. I consider myself a smart person, an intellectual person. And when you get yourself around other people that are thinking about a lot more things that you're thinking about, you're like, wow, I really wasn't thinking about a lot of things.
Yeah, I got a long way to go.
A lot more to go.
Yeah.
And Dr. Brown said, is like, you got to learn to learn. That really stuck with me from the first class.
Yeah. So maybe last one that I'll say is, and I'll give you three. So like, what are your top three favorite foods or favorite dishes? I know you've been around the world and everything. What's some clean commentary?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, our favorite pasta dish in Florence, Italy, from a cingale bianco, is a truffle pasta that has an egg and truffle dish next to it as a starter. It's me and my wife's favorite. That's one. Second, I would say the sushi in Tokyo. But my favorite from Tokyo is this really hole-in-the-wall ramen spot in Tokyo. That's incredible in Harajuku. So I would say that is my second. And then my third would have to be something that we call a bandeja paisa, which is a Colombian dish. Or a sancocho, which is kind of like a stew. This incredible Colombian stew with cilantro. It's incredible. So it just shows you, like, you know, my world, you know.
I haven't had dinner yet, but I'm
actually hungry.
Well, cool, man. Steve, it's been great to get to know your story and to surface some of the things that you've been able to experience, and hopefully kind of this chat and this green room that we've done is going to serve as an inspiration and a kind of a learning point for other people in our community and beyond that get to view this later. So let me just say again, happy Friday, and thank you so much for being here on Green Room as a part of Community College Experience. All the best to your family, and for your vulnerability and just sharing all these gems with us. We'll be eternally grateful. So I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Brandon. And, you know, one of the questions that you had asked before too is like, you know, how can you help me? And in your email. And I would say is just, you know, if anybody wants to be a part of the community and learn more about and follow us on our journey, helping giving back is, you know, is to send me a message on DM me on LS Gray. I'll respond directly, and it's an honor to have this kind of community around us and our brand. So I really would love that. If you guys can help me, all your brilliant minds, what are the ideas? What are the areas, or where are the problems in the world that you're seeing to fix? And I know Stanford's a big part of that. It's finding those, dig into that. And Jason is really a big advocate of that as well. Is like dig into the problem and you'll find the solution. So what are those problems that you're seeing in the world, and how can I help? And that would help me, is by you reaching out to me and being a part of the community, extending our community and our network to build.
Well, that's something that I'll for sure take into account. And when we repost this, I'll maybe put some resources and links and that kind of information there. So we've got the video to actually watch, and then also the resources right alongside it. So
yeah, and this is history. I'm gonna take a picture here.
History in the making.
There we go. Yeah. We made it, and it's an honor. Absolutely, Brandon. Thank you so much for doing this, and it's an honor for me to be a part of this. For my story to be part of a class at Stanford is a dream come true, and for me to be taking classes that are from Stanford as well. You know, so Mom, I'm going to Stanford. That's it. And wow, I'm so excited.
All right, man. Well, you came a long way from smelling like empanadas to living on top of the world now. So maybe you say peace out to everybody in Mandarin, and we'll cut the recording. How do you say that?
Oh, so if you sing, so xie is thank you, zaijian is bye-bye. I'll say my name, Waromingza Jiao Sidifu, Hangao Xin Rishani, which means my name is Steve. It's a pleasure to meet you. Zaijian, bye-bye.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much, Sneaker Steve. Have a great weekend, and we'll see
All right.
you soon, man.
All right. Thank you. Bye
All
bye.
right. Take care.